This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has summoned the Ambassador of the Republic of Mali to Algiers, Mahaman Amadou Maïga, in connection with recent developments in the situation in that country. The first wounded among the victims of the Zionist aggression against Gaza have arrived in Algeria. And the UN Security Council has once again postponed the vote on a resolution regarding the situation in Gaza, marking the fourth delay amid the ongoing Zionist aggression on the besieged territory. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. First, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has summoned the Ambassador of the Republic of Mali to Algiers, Mahaman Amadou Maïga, in connection with recent developments in the situation in that country, according to a ministry press release. The minister pointed out that historically, all Algeria's contributions to promoting peace, security and stability in Mali have always been based on three cardinal principles from which it has never deviated and from which it will not deviate, reads the text. First and foremost, the communique stresses is Algeria's intransgressible attachment to the territorial integrity, sovereignty and national unity of Mali. Secondly, the deep conviction that the peaceful path or process to the exclusion of all others is the only one capable of guaranteeing Mali irreversible and lasting peace, security and stability. Third, and as a consequence of the first two principles, it is through national reconciliation and not through recurrent fratricidal divisions that Mali will embark on a common project carried out by all its children without discrimination or exclusion, ultimately guaranteeing its sovereignty, national unity and territorial integrity, the same source stated. In addition to this reminder, mention was made of the communique issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on 13 December, in which Algeria called on all the Malian parties to renew their commitment to the implementation of the Peace and Reconciliation Agreement resulting from the Algiers process in order to respond to the legitimate aspirations of all the components of the brotherly Malian people for lasting peace and stability. The first wounded among the victims of the Zionist aggression against Gaza have arrived in Algeria. The wounded are two sisters, the first aged 22 with her infant and the second aged 16. The two young girls are in serious condition and were transferred to the Ain al-Najah military hospital in Algiers. The victims arrived aboard a medically equipped Algerian presidential plane from El Arish airport in Egypt. And the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza today announced that the death toll from the Zionist aggression against the enclave had risen to 20,057 martyrs since October 7. In a statement, the ministry said that 53,320 have been wounded since the beginning of the devastating war waged by the Zionist entity in the Gaza Strip. It added that in the last 48 hours, 390 Palestinians have been killed and 734 wounded in the Zionist bombardment of various areas of the besieged enclave. And now the inhabitants of the besieged Gaza Strip, the scene of unprecedented murderous Zionist attacks that have left tens of thousands of martyrs and wounded, will face a high risk of food insecurity and even famine over the next 6 weeks, according to a report by the United Nations Hunger Monitoring System published in Rome on Thursday. More details in this report by our colleague Saïd Bouazi.
The United Nations 5-level food insecurity classification system, known as the IPC, predicts in its most likely scenario that by 7th February, the entire population of the Gaza Strip, around 2.2 million people, will be in a situation of hunger crisis or worse. This is the highest proportion of people facing high levels of food insecurity that the IPC system has ever determined for any region or country, says the report. The IPC system rates hunger levels from 1 to 5. The report warns that around half the population of the Gaza Strip is expected to be in the emergency phase, which includes very high levels of acute malnutrition and excess mortality by 7th February. And at least one family in 4, or more than 500,000 people, will face Phase 5, that is catastrophic conditions. The international non-governmental organization CARE described these figures as alarming. According to the Palestinian health authorities, quoted by the Palestinian news agency WAFA, some 20,000 Palestinians have been martyred since 7th October, including at least 8,000 children and 6,200 women.
Still with the risk of famine threatening the population of Gaza, the international humanitarian organization Oxfam has said that 90% of the population of Gaza, or around 2.3 million people, are facing extreme hunger, underlining that the risk of famine is increasing on a daily basis. This is what emerges from a statement by the organization published on social media in response to data shared by the United Nations World Food Programme, WFP, regarding the rate of hunger in Gaza, stating that at least 25% of the population of the Palestinian enclave was facing extreme hunger. Underlining that this figure is grossly underestimated, Oxfam stated that more than 90% of the population is suffering from extreme starvation. And the Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates has called on the International Criminal Court (ICC) and the competent national courts in countries around the world to intervene as a matter of urgency, not only to force the Zionist entity to end its crimes against the Palestinians, but also to hold the perpetrators to account. In a statement quoted by the Wafa press agency, in diplomacy said that the Zionist occupation government, like its judicial system, must be held to account for the genocidal crimes ongoing since October 7 in Gaza and the West Bank. The ministry deplored the deafening silence of the Zionist occupation. Unfortunately, this silence makes the possibility of implementing the two-state solution more remote. Every day it regretted. And the World Health Organization (WHO) has warned that there are no longer any functioning hospitals in northern Gaza, while patients injured in the ongoing Zionist aggression who need surgery and cannot be moved are awaiting death. Saad Bougazi has more.
The World Health Organization has launched a new appeal for a ceasefire to allow aid into the besieged Palestinian enclave. Sean Casey, coordinator of the WHO's emergency medical team, said that patients in Al Ahli Arab Hospital were screaming in pain and begging for water. He described the place where people are waiting to die unless we can move them to a safer place where they can receive care. Stressing the need to alleviate the growing humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has said that lack of electricity, fuel and telecommunications disruptions have severely limited the UN efforts to provide vital aid to the people of the enclave. He added that the conditions for large-scale humanitarian operations must be restored immediately. According to the United Nations Health Agency, only 9 of Gaza's 36 health facilities are partially functional, all located in the south. According to the WHO's representative in the region, Richard Pieperkorn, there are no longer any operating rooms in the north due to a lack of fuel, energy, medical supplies, and health professionals, including surgeons and other specialists.
And participants in the Central Council session of the International Trade Union Confederation held in the Belgian capital Brussels have called for an immediate and sustainable ceasefire in Gaza. Deeming it a top priority for the international community, the Council urged respect for international law in Palestine. In their concluding statement, the attendees called upon the United Nations to promptly and urgently recognize the State of Palestine as a full UN member. They further appealed to the International Labour Organization (ILO) to grant Palestine equal status as a full member until the United Nations officially recognizes it as a full member state. The UN Security Council has once again postponed the vote on a resolution regarding the situation in Gaza, marking the fourth delay amid the ongoing Zionist aggression on the besieged enclave. This latest postponement comes after the United States announced its readiness to support the latest version of the resolution urgent measures to improve humanitarian aid access to Gaza. Saad Bougazi has more details again.
Diplomatic sources pointed out that the vote on the revised resolution is expected to take place on Friday. The new resolution formulated on Thursday calls for urgent measures to immediately enable safe and unobstructed access to humanitarian assistance, as well as creating conditions for a permanent cessation of hostilities. The fresh resolution abandons the call for an urgent and permanent halt to hostilities present in its original version. It also removes the plea for an urgent suspension of hostilities, a minor expression found in a later version but omitted in the new draft. Originally scheduled for Monday, the vote has been repeatedly postponed, with the latest delay announced on Thursday evening. Despite unprecedented pressure from UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres earlier this month, the United States has vetoed the adoption of a resolution calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza, where the Zionist aggression has persisted since October 7th. Last week, the General Assembly approved the same resolution with 153 votes in favor, 10 against, and 23 abstentions out of 193 member states. However, the UN General Assembly decisions are not binding. Following this overwhelming support, the United Arab Emirates presented the new resolution to the Security Council.
And some 4,655 Palestinians have been arrested by the Zionist occupation forces in the occupied West Bank since October 7, the date marking the start of the ongoing Zionist aggression against the Gaza Strip, association said on Thursday. In a joint statement, the Palestinian Prisoners Association and the Palestinian Prisoners Affairs Commission, affiliated to the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, said that the Zionist attacks on the Gaza Strip continued, as did the raids and detentions against Palestinians in the West Bank. The number of journalists martyred since the start of the Zionist aggression on the Gaza Strip has risen to 98, the Palestinian Media Office said today. The latest victim, Ala Abu Muammar, brings the number of martyrs to 98, the Palestinian Media Office said in a statement, without giving any details on the circumstances of his death. The Palestinian office had previously accused the Zionist occupiers of deliberately killing journalists in an attempt to obscure the truth and hinder the transmission of information to regional and world public opinion. Some 150 Dutch civil servants have demonstrated outside the Ministry of Foreign Affairs calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, an unusual protest in the country. For half an hour during their lunch break, ministry employees unfurled a banner reading, "Civil servants demand a ceasefire," explaining that they were protesting against the government's current position on the call for an end to the hostilities. There is concern that the Dutch government is still not calling for a permanent ceasefire, and that is essentially what we are here for today, a spokeswoman for the group told the media. And more than 20 countries have now joined the U.S.-led coalition to defend maritime traffic in the Red Sea from attacks by Yemen's Houthi rebels, the Pentagon has announced. A recent wave of attacks on ships in the Red Sea by the Houthis with drones and missiles is threatening to disrupt the flow of world trade, with major shipping companies halting passage through the Bab al-Mandeb Strait. In response, Washington earlier this week set up a new multinational maritime protection force. And with this, we come to the end of this news bulletin for today. Time now for a weekly program, starting with my colleague Jamal Silmani on the many achievements made by the President of the Republic during his reign over the last few years. It will be followed by another program on energy by my colleague Saad Bougazi. As for me, I'll meet you again tomorrow for a fresh edition of our news bulletin. Until then, stay tuned to Radio Alger International, and bye-bye for now.
The year 2023 was marked by Algeria's election as non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. The Algerian presidency has described the election as a diplomatic success, showing that the new Algeria is back on the international stage, adding that it reflected the international community's respect and esteem for the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune. In recognition of its pivotal role in the region, Algeria has been elected with an overwhelming majority of the 193 UN General Assembly member states in the first round of a secret ballot as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for a 2-year term starting on the 1st of January 2024. Following the election of Algeria, her permanent representative to the United Nations, Ammar Benjama, had this to say.
I would like to extend my sincerest thanks to the friendly countries that voted today in favor of the Algerian candidature as a non-permanent member of the Security Council for the term 2024-2025. Algeria's membership constitutes indeed a high priority for Algeria's diplomacy and for President Abdelmadjid Tebboune. This brilliant election is another testimony and a mark of recognition of Algeria's positive contribution and tireless effort to maintain peace and security at regional and international level. It is also a heavy but still honorable and very rewarding responsibility. Algeria will embrace this responsibility with a deep sense of humility, dedication, and commitment, and will contribute as a responsible and credible partner to enable global action in the face of global challenges by presenting ideas and initiatives that would enhance the role of multilateralism and maintaining international peace and security, thus meeting the need and the expectation and the aspiration of all mankind.
The adhesion of Algeria to the Security Council shows the international community's recognition of her contribution to the promotion of international peace and security and her commitment to defend fair causes with rigor and dedications. On the occasion, ceremony was organized here in Algiers in the presence of top government officials, diplomats and ambassadors. Two of the ambassadors who attended the ceremony had this to say.
I want to congratulate Algeria on its election. We are confident that Algeria will be a very good representative of Africa and a good representative for the Arab world. They have the principles, respect the principles of the UN Charter for countries that supports sovereignty, sovereign integrity of states, as well as the self-determination of states.
Algeria has a big potential to contribute greatly for the work of the Security Council in the United Nations. We are the member of the non-permanent seat in the Security Council starting this year. So Japan and Algeria will be together in the Security Council next year. And that will give us a great opportunity to work together. And we know that Algeria is very firm in respecting and also safeguarding the principles of UN Charter, and which is very important in the current situation. And we are calling for the promotion of rule of law in the international society. And so we count very much on Algeria, and we are very much looking forward to working together with Algeria within and even outside the Security Council.
The election of Algeria is the result of the President of the Republic's vision, an approach to the preservation of peace and security worldwide based on peaceful coexistence, peaceful settlement of disputes, and non-interference in the internal affairs of countries. This year, 2023, was marked by the speech of President Tebboune at the 78th session of UN General Assembly in New York, in which he stressed the need to build a more just and equitable multipolar world. President Abdelmadjid Tebboune said that for the past 50 years, the Algerian government has been pointing out how the global order's dysfunction prevents equality among member states, and that conflicts and crises have reached unprecedented levels and displaced millions amid an increasing number of emergencies worldwide. He stressed the necessity to uphold the rules of the Charter and establish a sound framework to strengthen international cooperation, adding that the global goals must be achieved in a multipolar world.
لقد حان الوقت للتفكير معا في سبل إعلاء قيم ومبادئ ميثاق الأمم المتحدة وتعزيز التزاماتنا الجماعية وإرساء الأسس المتينة التي تفضي إلى المزيد من التعاون العالمي الفعال بشأن القضايا الرئيسية حتى نتمكن من إشعاع السلم والأمن الدوليين وتحقيق أهداف التنمية المستدامة في ظل عالم متعدد الأقطاب.
President Tebboune says, quote, "The time has come for all of us to reflect together to uphold the principles and goals of the UN Charter and to strengthen our common engagement and to establish a sound framework for further effective international cooperation on major issues with the aim of consolidating international peace and security, as well as achieving sustainable development goals in a multipolar world." End of quote. As Algeria prepares to become a non-permanent council member, it stands ready to strengthen cooperation with all council members and use her experience in mediation to seek peaceful solutions to conflicts. The president said it would bring the aspirations of the African continent and Arab world to the council as it focuses on lasting solutions to conflicts by dealing with their root causes.
ومن هذا المنظور فإن الجزائر التي تتأهب لتبوء مقعدها غير الدائم بمجلس الأمن تعي ثقة المسؤولية الملقاة على عاتقها بالنظر للتحديات الجمة التي تواجهها المجموعة الدولية. واغتنم هذه السانحة لأجدد الشكر لكل الدول 184 التي صوتت لصالح بلادي، وهي ثقة ستحرص الجزائر على صونها أثناء عهدتها بالمجلس، وستسعى على تجسيدها بالتعاون الوطيد مع كافة الدول الأعضاء في مجلس الأمن وفي هيئة الأمم المتحدة.
The president says, quote, "Algeria, which prepares herself to be a non-permanent member of the Security Council, is aware about her responsibility, particularly in the face of the challenges the international community is facing. Bearing all that in mind, I want to take this opportunity to once again express my gratitude to the 184 member states who voted in favor of Algeria, and this is an expression of trust that Algeria will seek to preserve throughout her term in the Security Council. Algeria is ready to strengthen cooperation with all member states in the Security Council." End of quote. The progress on the Council's reform is also essential. Algeria will continue its efforts to change the historic injustices against the African continent and support oppressed peoples fighting in their freedom. Pointing to the Algerian government's long-standing support for the Palestinian people's right to establish an independent state, he called on the Council to adopt a resolution to guarantee the two-state solution and end the unilateral practices of the occupying authority, including the settlements on the Palestinian territory. In his speech, he called for an extraordinary assembly session to grant the state of Palestine the status of a full United Nations member state. He stressed Algeria's readiness to share her experience in combating terrorism, which must be a priority for the entire African region.
The guidelines laid down by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, at the last Council of Ministers meeting of 2022, namely working to increase gas production levels with a view to maintaining average national consumption on the one hand and strengthening exports on the other, in fulfillment of Algeria's commitment to its foreign partners, were achieved in 2023. 2023 is coming to an end with a wealth of achievements for the energy sector, including the conclusion of several agreements signed by the national energy company Sonatrach with international companies covering various areas related to hydrocarbons, confirming Sonatrach's role as a reliable supplier of energy. According to the National Agency for the Development of Hydrocarbon Resources, ALNAFT, Sonatrach signed during 2023 within the framework of the new law on hydrocarbons contracts with 6 global companies: Eni, Occidental Petroleum, Total Energies, Sinopec and Pertamina, while negotiations are underway with other major companies to conclude other contracts. Among the major agreements signed in 2023 are those between the Sonatrach Group and the Italian group Eni in Algiers on increasing gas supplies and reducing emissions. Bilateral strategic agreements were signed in the presence of President Tebboune and the President of the Italian Council of Ministers, Giorgia Meloni, who was visiting Algeria for the construction of a new gas pipeline to transport natural gas and, alternatively, hydrogen and blue and green ammonia, as well as the laying of an undersea electricity cable and the extension of natural gas liquefaction capacity. This is an extremely important project that will make Italy a hub for the distribution of energy products to Europe, said the President of the Republic, referring to the new gas pipeline project. In the field of marketing, major contracts for the delivery of gas were also signed in 2023. These include an agreement signed by Sonatrach with the Chinese company Wanhua Chemical for the supply of liquefied petroleum gas LPG to the Wanhua Petrochemical Complex in China. During the year, Sonatrach also signed a major agreement with the Turkish company Botas for the sale and purchase of liquefied natural gas LNG for the Turkish market for a period of 3 years. In addition, in July 2023, the national company completed its first delivery of LNG to Eni, the world leader in the supply of liquefied natural gas, at the new floating regasification terminal in Piombino, Italy, delivered by an LNG carrier owned by the subsidiary Hyproc, opening up the prospect of increasing gas volumes to this new terminal. 2023 also saw the resumption of Sonatrach's activities in Libya. In terms of discoveries, the company announced 10 new hydrocarbon discoveries, in addition to 16 others achieved in 2022, confirming the country's significant oil and gas potential and the efforts made to explore and renew reserves. At the end of 2022, in the case of gas, President Tebboune stressed the need to increase the number of discoveries in order to raise the volume of exports from the current 53 billion cubic meters to nearly 100 billion cubic meters in the long term. In terms of export revenues, Algeria recorded at the end of September 2023 around $38 billion in export, according to government figures, to reach $48 billion by the end of the year. In addition, major energy infrastructure projects have been launched, including the Sidi Bel Abbas Fuel Storage and Distribution Center, with a capacity of 180,000 cubic meters, ensuring fuel autonomy for 30 days for the country's western and southwestern regions. And in order to make a success of the energy transition, several projects were launched in 2023, including the launch of a call for tenders by the Sonelgaz Group for the production of 2,000 megawatts of photovoltaic solar electricity. The tender includes the construction of 15 solar power plants across 12 provinces, with unit capacities ranging between 80 and 220 megawatts, in addition to the construction of facilities for connection to the electricity grid.